Now, let's be real. Racism exists, sexism exists, whole lot of isms exist. But if we're going to wait for the world to become fair before we do something great, it's just never going to happen. Now, this episode is not about what's in our way. It's about what's in our hands. Because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to ourselves, to each other, and to the next generation to move the community forward. No excuses, no delays, not because they'll let us, but because no one is coming to save us. And we've always been the answer.
And I really want to drive the issue or the fact that we are not trying to downplay anyone's experiences, our own experiences, and the experience of many millions of people in this country and around the world. But what we are trying to do is to show us that we are still the light. We are still in control of ourselves and what we choose to do and not do, and that we must act on it. We must be intentional with the things that we do so that we can move ourselves forward regardless of these hurdles that are going to be there. And it's very important for you to listen with that ear. I want to say we've asked this before of different people and different topics, like please just listen with an open ear and a good faith conversation. And we still, sometimes get these comments where, no, not listening to that, not listening to y'all, not whatever. And it's like, okay, like,
right.
We're not saying to agree. I'm not an expert. I'm not lecturing. I'm kind of talking through this, what I need to do, what we need to do, ideas, things that have actually done and work for us. So please listen with that ear, knowing that our purpose is to be in good faith to help our community grow stronger.
Absolutely. And with that, I guess we'll get started with the conversation.
Yes.
All right.
So I want to start with what I feel like I know best and what
Okay.
I do, in my 31 years of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I know everything, but I do know some things. And I must say that I feel an area that we need to work on is being intentional
Yes.
with our parenting and our teaching.
Yes.
To these young people, this group of people that we feel need this extra support because they are not meeting the standards, or they're not able to live up to what the goals and the expectations that we've set for them. And I think a lot of it starts at home. I'm going to be honest, and I'm not trying to play the blame game. But the things that we say and don't say to our young children really impacts their performance at school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just not communicating with them in a two-way type of communication really impacts their vocabulary alone. Mm-hmm. So they're already coming in behind, even though you feel you've done all the things, you've taken them everywhere, you make sure that they have food and a roof over their head and places to go. It's what you're filling them with, what you're nurturing them with is really also, I mean, those other things are basic things that we all need to, as humans, but we need to give more. We need to give more time, and we need to watch the things that we're saying in front of our kids, the expectation. And we can't just have an expectation that they do well, but not help them do well.
Exactly.
Right. And a lot of that happens, before they're even talking, like how you're talking to them and the things that you're doing. And I'm bringing all this up because this is an investment in your child's education and future. And it starts very young. Mm-hmm. And unless we're intentional about the things that we do, making sure that we're reading to them, reading with them, having them see us read, exposing them to positive things and different things, and not sheltering at all, but they don't need to hear the conversation the same way the adults have the conversation. Yeah. It's just a lot. I think it's a lot on our kids. They're trying to be a kid, and then they're also carrying some very heavy adult issues. And I think that tends to happen a lot more in our community. I'm sure it happens everywhere, but I'm talking about our community today. Sure. Right. Sure. And so I think it happens too often. Again, not shielding. They need to know certain things, but at their level. But I think kids are hearing conversations that they don't need to hear. Yes. They're seeing things they don't need to see. Yes. And all of that impacts how they go out and deal with all the isms that are out there. Yeah. There's just a little bit of resistance sometimes with the families, maybe because of their personal experience growing up with school, and I understand everyone is busy and they have, lots of commitments and things are hard. But whether you have 5 minutes or you are, you stayed home with them, you have to invest that. You have to see that as an investment that's going to grow over time, right?
Yes.
Whether you put $5 in the bank every week or month, or $10 in the bank every week or month, you're still building.
Yes.
Right. But when you don't put anything, when you're really, you're putting $1, you got to understand the outcome is going to be different.
Yeah.
And I think if we really want to see some of these changes that we want to see, that it's going to start with us,
right?
And the things that we do and then we prepare ourselves with. And I think children are one of the hugest ways to make a difference in the future.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, one of the things with this conversation, it's not like we're just talking to the audience, but we're actually talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because I spent the first 40 years of my life being severely depressed and doing a lot of getting angry at the things around me and all of those kinds of things. And I got to a point where I got tired of being that way. I knew that I was part of the problem. I knew that I wasn't moving the situation forward. But I didn't really know how to turn it around. And so what I had to do was, sometimes it's kind of funny, but I had to stop watching certain TV shows, like negative TV. I tried to start watching more positive TV show just to break myself out of it. I was a big fan of Dexter back then. I had to stop watching it, even some of the music I was listening to, some of the hip hop that was more talking down on things. And I had to stop.
Right.
Just till I got to a point where I felt like I was strong enough to be able to handle it, but one of the other things that I did was I started to separate myself from people who were like me, who were also negative, because I knew that in order for me to start looking at solutions, I needed to be around solution-oriented people. And so that affected friendships, it affected work relationships, and I just really tried to put it out there. And so it was really one of those fake it till you make it scenarios, because initially it wasn't even authentic. But I knew that, for me, I could sit around and talk about, what I don't have and what's going against me and all these kind of things, or I could work towards a solution. And I can't work towards a solution if I'm clouding my mind with all of the problems.
Yeah. And I would want to add to that I think it's important not to ignore. I hear people saying like, it's not that bad. Just focus on the positive. And we don't really see it. It's not what you think. And I disagree with that. Like, those things are there, but to not focus on them all the time and not let those things drive how you move every single day.
Absolutely.
Like, we still want awareness. We still know that we do need to, have a certain amount of, wokeness and anger about these things, so that we can, not pretend that they don't exist. And we know that some of these things impact certain people more than others. And so we can't say, well, my life's all great, so why can't yours be? We do need to, I feel, for me, I need to keep that in mind. But at the same time, what am I doing to combat all of those things? What am I exposing myself to?
Right.
Am I finding joy every day? We get this one life, right? Yeah. So am I finding joy every day? Am I able to find joy in my family, in my home, when I'm not dealing with this stuff outside? Keeping in mind, like, keeping your home, I feel like, is huge. As a person who grew up, from the time I was like 11 until my late 20s with a lot of turmoil in the house.
Yes.
It's so important to me to have a nice, peaceful, quiet home, place to lay my head. And I know everyone doesn't have that situation.
Absolutely.
And it depends where you live. Maybe it's quiet in your house, but not outside. But you're going to have to find that peace within.
Yes.
Because otherwise, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to have to find those ways to create that peace within yourself. And I know there's a lot of buts and ands and all of that, but this has to be an also. You must. It is detrimental to your mental health
and physical health.
That's
Yes.
right. Because a lot of the things that we think and feel, I remember when I was first diagnosed with high blood pressure, I said to the doctor, okay, so what if I'm like, I'm deep breathing and I change what I eat and exercise and all of those things. He's like, yeah, but you also have to change what you think about.
Yes.
Even though you may be very calm, if in your mind, you're thinking of all these things that are very stressful, your body recognizes that. And we know that we are impacted by certain, horrible diseases and, different things with health higher than a lot of other people. And we don't actually usually take the time to combat those things with what we're eating and what we're doing and thinking and the people that we're around.
Yeah.
So it's, in order for us to grow, we have to, we have got to do better with our emotional and mental health. We must not be so angry, lead with anger.
Yeah. And what we have to, it's really what we do with it. One of the things that, and I don't remember where I heard it from many years ago, was guard the door to your emotions, and like you said, this is not about acting like problems aren't there.
Right.
But it's turning that anger into action, and instead of getting angry, getting active, and you'll see that that you're going to be more productive because your mind is open to possibilities, and it does really, those negative feelings really do take you down.
Right.
And so another thing that I did that really helped me out was mentoring other people. I've been in government, been in cybersecurity for a lot of years, and I've always kind of been a mentor, but I started to take it more seriously, where I really had taken some people under my wing and tried to help them learn from the mistakes that I've made in the past, and some of the stumbles that I've had, and so that's one of the things that I would say to everyone is that, especially if you get to a certain age, there's a lot of things that you've mastered, a lot of things that you're very good at. And there's people behind you that are trying to learn what you learn. And the more you do that, it does two things. First off, it takes a lot of the negative feeling away from you because you're working towards a solution. The second thing it does is it helps the next person to not have to stumble the way you did. Right. They have a smoother route to get to where you are, which is evolution, which is what we want in the first place. So that's one of the solutions that I would really recommend is finding people and mentoring. Whatever it is you do for a living, there's someone coming up behind you.
Right.
And mentoring that person and helping them through the process.
Right. Looking at some of either your friends or coworkers or just somebody who's in like some proximity to you, the successes that they've had, and reaching out to them. And maybe they're not reaching out to you, but maybe you reach out to them. You'll find that they'll share with you some of the things that they're doing to help you along, especially I would say financially, right? Like we want to build some financial wealth that we can pass on to family. Right. And I think one of the things that we may not do is buying life insurance.
Yes.
Right. It's hard to give away money every month, to something that you're not going to see.
Right.
Right. But you still have to have that mindset, right? Because you are going to set up your kids or whoever you decide to leave it to.
Yes.
You're really going to help them by investing in something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's going to pull us out of some of the issues.
Sorry to interrupt, but while you're doing that, walking everyone else through the process to make it easier for them as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And also, how we spend money, the things that we invest in. I know myself, like I was big on as soon as I got enough cash, and life felt like, it's better than when I was growing up. I'm, buying really expensive things, Louis Vuitton and all of that stuff. And fine, if you can afford that and you still have everything else in order, fine.
Yeah.
But maybe reconsidering, especially as we're finding out that those things are made very cheaply.
Yes.
And then like one piece is made in, Europe, and then they charge you, 10 times the amount. But realizing that those things are not as important as building something so that you can make your life easier and your child's life easier, or your family, your mother, your spouse.
Yes.
It's really important for us to just think about that differently and maybe not have our kids in $200 shoes that they're going to grow out of in a few months. And instead, I've had a lot of people are like, I can't afford a tutor, but they're spending tons of money on things.
Yes.
And they don't realize if they were to add it up, it's probably more than a tutor. And it's definitely not going to give you the same feedback. It's not going to give you the same, investment return, rather, investing in those things that are just items than it is to like give your child a tutor, not only when they're failing, but when to get them ahead.
Yes.
Right. That's the goal. That's what a lot of different communities do. These kids have tutors and extra support to be at a 4.0, not to just be, keeping their head above water. So just thinking about things thinking about money a little bit differently and how we spend it, I think would be a huge benefit to our community.
Yeah.
We have to think community wise. We can't constantly think individually.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't see how else we're going to move forward if we are constantly only thinking individually, or we're against each other in any way, against people who make more or who make less. And, it's something that we have to change the mindset on that.
Yeah. I mean, because honestly, we can't do this individually.
Right.
We just can't. And I just know for me, the changes that I've been able to make in my life, I didn't make them alone. I had friends and family. I had people to help me, sometimes guide me, sometimes push me back when I was going in the wrong direction. I didn't do any of this alone. And so I think that, when we try to make these changes by ourselves, if they do happen, they don't stick.
Right.
We need the right people around us, and so a lot of it, I started changing my conversations when I decided that I wanted to become more positive and more solution oriented. And so I would get around, the fellas or whatever, and they're complaining about this and that. And I had to say, well, what are we going to do about it? Because we're not going to do anything. Let's move on to the next subject. What are we going to do about it? And what I noticed was the guys that would stick around in the conversation were the ones that I kept talking to. Because you have some people who just wanted to be negative and they would just kind of move on. But it was like, okay, we have these situations. What can we actually do? And actually, huddling as a group and saying, what can we do to start to make the situation better?
Right.
And even with my mentorship, that, I was helping other people to become mentors, because the people I mentored, my demand for them was, well, then you'd mentor the next person. That's how you thank me, is by mentoring the next person. We have to stop looking at this individually. We have to look at this collectively.
Yes. And I think if you live in an area, I mean, like where you come from, there's this rich Black culture, and it's very different. But I would say here in California, or in LA specifically, we're very separated, and there's like these pockets, and it's just a different cultural vibe. I mean, than it is, so if you're in an area like that, you got to try to create that space.
Yes.
I'm not sure what to do. I know of things that I've done in the past. I've started meetups, and you would get a lot of people saying that they would come, and then they wouldn't. And that's hard. But the thing is, you can't give up. I think that's like the biggest thing.
Yes.
Is that you have to understand that in order for change to happen, you have to be consistent.
Yes.
And you have to weather the storms of people maybe not jumping on and board with you and all of that. And you just got to keep moving and just think about how many people there are, in this world or in your city, and you got to keep reaching out to them, or maybe you'll crack somebody who wasn't crackable before.
Yeah.
You can't give up. Like, you have to keep moving forward. It's the only way we're going to come together and make a big difference,
Yes.
And you have to step outside of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's what
Absolutely.
we're asking. I think I've been outside my comfort zone quite a bit. And I need to continue to do that. I understand that. My personal biggest way that I'm always trying to make a difference is through the students. That's huge. The conversations that I have, what I expose them to. I do try to also be an example for other teachers and all that, but you can't control anyone else. You can only control yourself, but I just try to do what I do, even if it isn't met with the, greatest open arms.
Right.
It is with the kids always, like, they love that stuff, empowerment, like,
Yes.
I know that I'm there to do a specific job, but I know how I do it is very important. And I know that certain students need to hear certain things that they're not hearing at home. So I'm going to be that person that's going to say it. I'm going to do it. That I believe very strongly in that, because we know that as many mentors as you can have, and a teacher can be a mentor, is important. So I'm not going to just, bow my head at that and be like, that's the parent's job. I mean, it's all of our jobs, right? It takes a village. Takes a village.
Yeah. And I tell you, one of the ways that I've been able to approach people, because, everybody would love to see someone who's negative and lecture them and try to turn them around. But one of the things that I started doing was I would find something that I wanted to emulate in that person, and I'd ask them for advice on how to do that. And so trying to open everything up, being vulnerable myself, saying, hey, I'm not good at this. Can you help me to be better at this? And hoping that as they're helping me to be better at what they're good at, then they start to open up on the things that they want to get better at.
Right.
And so sometimes you've got to make the first step and just ask for that advice. And that opens up the conversation. And then maybe they'll ask you about something that you're good at.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to jump back to when we were talking about what we expose ourselves to.
Yes.
And I think you maybe you mentioned the music, or maybe that was in our conversation before we started.
I did a little bit
rolling. But I'm not saying don't ever listen to this type of music or this or that. But what you have to realize is like how it impacts you, and everyone's different, right? So me growing up in LA in the 80s and 90s and like listening to NWA, I wasn't so impacted by it where I'm like trying to emulate their life. I didn't live in that area. I lived on the complete opposite side. For me, it was just a song. I knew that these things were happening, and I knew that it was important. Like it was this is real. They're not making this stuff up, but it didn't make me want to live the lifestyle. But someone who lives in that area and that's all that they know and all that they see, especially young, impressionable kids who don't maybe have something to do after school, or they don't have quite the support they need at home, that stuff does impact them.
Yes,
it does. They look at it as a way out, or they try to, what's the word? They just get too attached to it and feel like they also are, I'm going to live that life and that's me and I'm going to glorify it. And So I think that we have to be careful. You have to think about where you're at, where your child is at, what they're exposed to. And some things that kids hear, it's going to change them. You have to look at your kid. Yes. Are they very impressionable?
Yes.
Is that all that they see? Are they also being exposed to, the beach and the ocean? Or all they're hearing about is the street and, glorifying.
Getting them out of that environment.
Weapons and alcohol and all that stuff. So you have to pay attention. That's what about being intentional. Be intentional about what's going on in your life and everyone else's. And it's true. Like I'm a social media person and I could sit and scroll for hours. But I noticed that when I first started on TikTok, what was in my feed was just people making jokes. And I'd be like 3 a.m, dying, laughing, tears. But when you hit like or you watch some video too long that's negative, next thing you know, all that's in your feed. And you're like, I'm angry. And I definitely felt that way. So I try to hit on other things. I try to actually look up things that are lighter so that my feed changes and so that what I'm being exposed to changes. I'm being intentional about it. But it did take people saying something to me. Yeah, I mean,
it kind of brings up an experiment that I did. This is several years ago. There was this book I was reading by a guy who unfortunately died a few years ago, Trevor Mawad, but the book was called It Takes What It Takes. And one of the things he talked about was doing an experiment where you cut out the negative music, the negative social media, TV shows just for a month. And then after that month, just see if you have a change. Just see how you are. Just see if you seem to be. And I actually did that, and it's amazing. You know, I took for 1 month and stopped listening to some of the music that I like. Watching shows that and not all this, delusional type of happy stuff,
right?
But not the vitriolic, the angry, the rants and the all that kind of stuff. I kept myself away from it for 1 month, and even my friends said that I was different. Just a month.
Wow.
Because you don't have that constant reinforcement of those negative of the negative things going on.
Yeah.
And I would challenge anybody, just the social media posts, the music, the shows you watch, the ones that are negative, that don't seem to have any kind of solution to them. Just give yourself a month of just taking it out of your feed. Right. And of course, one benefit it'll do is it'll change your algorithm. Yeah. Yes. But what it does is that it does open your mind up. Because it takes you out of this constant anger. Yes. And during those times during that month, there were still things going on in my life. So it's not like everything was great. But what I noticed was I was quicker to find solutions because my mind was more open. Right. And so that was a huge benefit. Yeah, I think we need to do that more often. Yeah. It's like making sure that we are taking care of our mind, clearing our mind, which brings me to wanting to talk about therapy. I think that's a huge thing. It's been a little bit taboo in our community, but I think it's changing. I think more and more people I think it's changed. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's already rounded the corner. I think there's even more Black therapists out there. Absolutely. Right? And so we really, I think women are much more open to going to therapy, but I think more men are going to therapy. And I think that's very important to do so. Extremely important to do so. I only know a few guys that are not in therapy. Oh, so. Awesome. Yeah. But again, we're talking about different kinds of circles, right? Yes. Not every circle is like yours. Yes, right? Absolutely. And so there's still these circles where it's like, I'm doing that. Ain't nobody telling me, and I'm not going. So we're trying to get to, and until we crack the people who have been in a cycle for decades, generations, those are the people I'm really trying to get to. Yes. So that we can all just be moved along a little bit further. Yes. Move the needle along. And so keeping in mind that, we're in a place where our circle and we're a little more open, but there's still those groups that are not. And that's predominantly probably that's at least who I'm trying to address as a teacher and just as a fellow human. Yes, I want to talk to people who are similar to me, but those people who are just, they don't know what they don't know. Yes. They don't even realize because they're not either willing or exposed, or their circle is all negative. Yeah. And some of these people, and I've seen it like even with some of your kids in school, some of these kids are so capable, have so much potential if they could just get out of their own way. And I know adults like that, unfortunately, who are so intelligent, so capable, but they get in their own way with the negative thoughts. Right. And not stepping outside what tradition. Right. And, long held belief systems. Yes. No one's saying to abandon it, but you have to, be a critical thinker about some of these things. And ask yourself, what can I do to move forward? Yes. Yeah, because, we've been able to come so far in these decades, and we still have a long way to go. but we've made so much progress, and we really don't need anybody's help. It would be nice if everybody did, but I think that with our capabilities, if we can just step outside of our own reality for a moment, look at everything collectively and see what we can do collectively, I don't, there's nothing that we can't accomplish.
Yeah.
There's and that's one of the things that excites me about this is that we, like I said in the opening, we are the answer. And so it's not like we need to go out and look for it. We already are there. And so that really encourages me to keep going.
Right. And I think, people who tend to think they're good or they're okay, what they put out on social media, I think a lot of negative comments that are out there for people to read, just everything's funny, making light of people's situations. Also making comments like you're upset that another group of people is making these comments towards your community, but you do the same to theirs. I mean, and thinking that somehow that's okay,
right.
All of that, we need to just totally reevaluate that kind of behavior. It's actually, not only is it impacting people who are reading it, but it's impacting you. You don't even realize that you're sitting there saying all of these things and just contradictory to what the goals that we're all trying to reach, the things that we say we want. Right. And so that behavior is not going to move you forward. It's only going to hold you and somebody else back.
Yeah. And you've talked before about getting out of your community because, we talked several episodes ago about they and how people love to say they, but when you get around that they, you may find commonality with they, and so then all of a sudden they become people and not this thing that you want to just point the finger at.
Right.
But you do have to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get out of your community, and just, go out there and meet people and work towards solutions.
Right. I mean, you'll hear a lot of, this just crossed my mind because I think I saw just recently this, prisoner who was talking about, he was reflecting on his life and how he wished he had, parents around and he wished that he had listened more and that he did better and all of that. And, they got away from, I mean, you're sure there's lots of prisoners in there, but you have different kind of time in there, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people have spent time reading and becoming better. I've seen these shows and these different Instagram pages or TikTok where it's like prisoners are sitting there talking with each other about all the things that
I've actually known people like that.
I think that's amazing, and I think we need to do that too. It shouldn't have to be something so drastic like that to get us to be vulnerable and talk about things that we need to work on and change.
But vulnerability is the key. It's absolutely the key, because once you're vulnerable and you tell your friends, hey, here's the things that I want to do. I want to start being solution oriented. I want to start changing the way I think about things. And if your friends are on board, then you have this collective where you can just hold each other accountable.
Right.
You can encourage each other. Hey, you're going off the deep end here. Let's come on back on.
Right.
And so it really does start with that community, having friends that are going in the same direction. Luckily for me, I had friends that were already there. So, it was me that had to catch up.
Right.
But having friends that you can talk about your problems and why you get angry about these things and why you get frustrated about these things and wanting to turn it around. Then you have then you're not trying to figure it out on your own. You've got friends that can make suggestions and then they start to impart things that they're trying to fix. And before you know it, as a group of people, you're rising as a group of people. And one of the things I've noticed, because this is what I noticed in government when I had a bunch of people around me who were all trying to rise and help each other, more people want to join that group. And you get people who see, hey, look at all these, look at what they're doing. Right. And then you get people who want to join that group. And that's how you make the community larger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I really think that we can do so much better, but we have to use that energy that we put into being angry. We have to put it into action.
Yes, we have to put as much attention towards the joy.
Yes.
And the change that we can create as we do just being mad about things that have already happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we've gone through everything. What do you think?
I think so. Sometimes it's hard to remember everything. There's so much you want to say, but if there's anything I'd want people to walk away with is that, you're going to try to just whatever area you need to work on. Let's all try to just be a little bit better and convince that of our family and friends as well. Have those vulnerable conversations with them. And if you're in a situation where it feels like you can't make leaps and bounds to be better, just do what you can, because every piece of investment towards improving your life and our life it's going to, you're going to feel it later on. But if you, right, like it's like kind of, they say quitters never win, right? So it's not possible. If you stop, there's no way for sure you're going to win, right? So you have to keep going, knowing that there will be times that you lose, but the more you do it, the more you practice, the more open-minded that you are, you're going to reap those benefits. So don't give up, stay open-minded, try to, we know that racism and all of those isms exist and we're not ignoring them and we still want to make change, but don't allow it to bring your entire life down or to cripple you from doing the things that you want to do, because this is your life.
Yes.
And so you have the opportunity to live it the best that you can. And so take that opportunity.
Yeah. Because those things are always going to be there. And you can't allow that to keep you and your community from doing better. There's so much that has been done in a whole lot worse conditions than what people have gone through. And so we can do better. We must do better. And a lot of it starts with just deciding you're going to get a little bit better every day. I'm not a huge fan of drastic changes because they don't normally stick. But I feel that if you just say, I'm just going to get a little bit better today and a little bit better tomorrow, those changes are sustainable. And then when you find a community, and I'm just going to keep going back to it, find that community who is also going in that direction, who can not only hold you accountable, but also encourage you and give you strategies and all those types of things. That's what we need.
Yes, we do.
So for this, I believe this is the 44th episode.
I think so.
Of Love, Growth, and Narratives. I'm Frederick.
And I'm Tiffany.
Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Bye.